Okay, but that's all right. Patrick, do you want to share your screen? Great. Okay. So we thought we'd do intros and what is reimagined for new people joining, which, Patrick, I can't see how many participants we have. Do we have some new folks joining us today?
I guess Sean.
Sean, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, aside from Sean, that's our only new participant here today.
Okay, great. Welcome, Sean. Sean actually did an interview with us earlier today for the organizer position. Thought it might be an interesting thing for if he wanted to join us tonight. So welcome, Sean. And I think everyone really knows what the Reimagined Turtle Creek Watershed and Airshed Communities Plus is about. That's something that we talked earlier today with Sean about, and I know that everyone else on here knows what TICWAC is. So we really want to get to the meat and potatoes of what our discussion is tonight. And Patrick and I put together a presentation for you guys to really learn how to bring these reimagine projects to from ideas to reality. So that's going to be the bulk of what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A. Then we're going to do our breakout sessions like we normally do for viewing, for doing project planning. And what we're going to do is, and we have a small group. So if other people join on to us, on the call later, we can do breakout sessions. If it makes sense to not do breakout sessions, I think we can reevaluate that later, and maybe we can all discuss where our projects are individually. And so we thought it might be a nice kind of hands-on exercise for folks to go through the project planning template and look to see where their project was in that process, and maybe some information that's missing that you need to put in there for the next group meeting that you have for your particular working group. And then we're going to do updates for working groups, and then we'll regroup at the end. And it says discussion of downstream strategies analysis. Is that something we're going to talk about again today, Heather?
I can just then or now say that so they're working on it. The downstream strategies are working on the report and the materials they're putting together. And they sent me a draft of the toolkit, the guide that is a big part of what they're presenting to us. They haven't started working, or it's not in what I saw, the specific projects yet. They were going to do that later. There are sections for them, but they don't have them written up yet. But there's a lot of really useful information because they have worked on all kinds of different studies with different groups, that are reimagining. They're not necessarily calling that, but for their communities, the projects. And so they can draw from those examples to provide information to us. So it's just chock full of good information.
Great, thank you for that update, Heather. I'm excited to see the final product. And Emily joined us. Hi, Emily, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks for joining tonight. All right, okay, so why don't we go ahead to the next screen? And so this is kind of the bulk of the presentation for tonight, bringing Reimagine projects from ideas to reality. And thank you guys all for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about this. This is something that we actually went through with the food systems group already, and it kind of made us realize that we need this type of presentation and resources readily available for community members that want to start on their projects, and some of the considerations that they need to understand in order to do that. So Patrick, do you want to go to the next screen? Thank you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, and this is all from our template that we shared with the steering committee members a few weeks ago. But the first thing you want to talk about when you talk about your project is how to fund your project. You really can't do anything with your project until you have funding for it. And so what we did here is, and you guys will have a copy of the slideshow presentation. You can actually download it as a PDF, and I'll make sure either Patrick or Mary sends that to you. And then all of these little green links are live in your will be live in your PDF. So you can just refer back to this PDF and click on the link and go right to the document that you need in order to fulfill what you want to do. But Patrick, if you wouldn't mind, so we're going to go over sources of income and expenses within your budget. If you wouldn't mind just clicking on that link for me. We're going to really quickly show you guys what we put together today. Some of this we already had in here, but we kind of expanded upon this a little bit today, knowing that some of you are doing this for the first time and might need some information at hand in order to fill this out the way that you need. And so a lot of this information we actually pulled right from the food systems group. So thank you to the food systems group for filling this out. And we use this kind of method all the time with Protect PT when we're doing project budgets. So you got your group name at the top, you got your project name. That's really important. You also have your end and beginning date for your project, and then your amount requested will then pull into the numbers from the bottom. The top part is all your revenue. And if you'll scroll down, Patrick, you have the bottom part. Now, with this particular budget for food systems, we wanted to break things up into different categories, and I'll tell you why later. But we broke things up into different categories for a really specific reason, because we have critter protection, garden tool kits, outreach and education, and then we had the full budget down at the bottom, and then also the cost of each bed. So we wanted to kind of see, well, how much would each one cost? Now down at the bottom, you have examples of income. So you can have income from direct donations, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do that, whether it's membership income, if you take any kind of dues, like membership dues for your group. Every time you meet, maybe you pass a hat and everyone pitches in $5, whatever, everything's different now with COVID, but however you do that. You also have potential corporate contributions, like we're signed up for Amazon Smile. So anytime someone purchases something through the Amazon Smile website, we get a pretty small portion of that, but it's a corporate contribution. In-kind support, meaning volunteers and donation of goods. Direct public support, which is just a fancy word for donations, and merchandise sales, so t-shirts and posters and things like that. And then you have your grants. Under grants, you have foundation grants, government and state grants, endowments, and corporate grants. And by corporate grants, I gave you a couple examples of those types of grants. For example, Patagonia has a really great grant program. We actually found a grant for Cliff Bar that we could potentially use for Reimagine. And so we're excited about that. We're going to start applying for that grant. And then also Ben & Jerry's. So these are just a couple, but a lot of these different retail type corporations have a grant program, especially if their mission as as a corporation connects with what you're doing. So, Patagonia has a really big outdoor presence. They sell outdoor wear. A lot of the materials within their gear is recycled and upcycled. So they are a great resource for grants. And so you can see kind of like, sometimes it just takes digging around and you can find a grant for your project. Okay, so then we also have examples of expenses. So there's main categories, and we pulled these main categories really from our main categories from QuickBooks. When you go into like a specialized system for QuickBooks, these are all the different categories. So this really ties directly into if you had to do any kind of an accounting or really sharp budget for your group. These are exactly what any accountant or any funder would want to see within your organization or within your group. They'd want to see contract services, facilities, and equipment, which is different than equipment purchases. And let me tell you the difference. If you're renting equipment versus if you're buying equipment can be a long-term asset. So that actually goes into a different category in your budget. You also have things like operations, and I gave you different descriptions and some examples of these different things down below, so you guys can see what's included. For instance, you might see something twice, like outreach and operations. You're going to see that twice, or you're going to see printing twice here, and maybe postage twice here. That's because that's printing and postage for a specific purpose. So when you're doing some type of outreach and you're printing for, let's say, a flyer or something like that, actually goes under outreach, even though it's the same exact process as something you are printing. Like for us, we're going to be printing an employee handbook soon. That would go under operations. So does that make sense to everybody? Does that work? All right. So Patrick, if you wouldn't mind going back to, and this is an example budget. So if you want to click on it, you can click on it, you can make a copy of it, and then you can use it for your project. Okay, so we went over different sources of income and expenses. And the second part is brainstorming your ideas. So, consider your audience with any kind of fundraising. You want to also set a goal with your fundraising. Because if you go into it, and that's kind of why the budget's important to do first, because if you go into it and say, okay, our goal is this much, that's what we have to raise, it'll be a lot easier for you to set that goal.
Yeah.
And do we have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to mute you, Meredith. All right. And then, some other considerations. Yes, Lois.
You said you were going to provide a PDF of that later on by email to us as participants?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
And then all these links are live. So all these green links are live in the PDF. So you can click on it. And like I said, just make a copy of the documents on Google or download it even. You can download the document and then just work right there. Okay, so when you're talking about brainstorming for how to fund your project, or fundraising in general, you want to think about your goal. You want to consider your audience. You also want to, try to figure out what platform you want to use. With the food systems, and I'm going to use them a lot as an example tonight because they are a great example of, bringing an idea to life. One of the things that we discussed was, do we do crowdfunding? What is the best way for us to accomplish getting people to not only see the project that is going on, but also share the project and also hopefully contribute to the project. So something like crowdfunding, not only is it going to raise funds, which is one of the really specific purposes, but it also can help with bringing visibility to your project, just telling people about it. And then once someone shares it online, then it's going to hopefully catch fire and other people will want to share it and other people will want to donate. And that's kind of the whole purpose of crowdfunding. We also gave you some crowdfunding tips from one of our partners here. Halt the Harm Network has some awesome crowdfunding tips for you. And you also have to find out what's right for your project. This crowdfunding formula was wonderful for food systems, but I think on our last call, we discussed some of the ways that, health and wellness, they want to do a podcast, some of the different ways they can raise money for that purpose. So, you also always have to consider your project and find what's going to fit best for you, because there's never a one size fits all thing for everybody. And then think about other ways to generate income. So, maybe you want to generate income. I think Alyssa had suggested, she had these like protein bars or something that she wanted to try to sell. That's a great other way to generate income. Selling items that maybe you make, understanding the proceeds will go to your project, whatever the ideas are. No idea is a bad idea. What I would suggest is just look to make sure that it's acceptable. So when we first started with Protect PT, we started doing these little pull tickets with the lottery. And so we'd have to sell, I think it was like 200 pull tickets, and we sold them, and I forget how much we sold them for, a couple bucks each. But then we'd get a big pot of money, and someone would win a certain percentage or a certain amount of that money based on the lottery number. But you did have to have a small game of chance license in order to do that. So just, keep that kind of stuff in mind when planning your fundraising. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind going to the next screen, Patrick. All right. Other fundraising considerations. Always ask for donations of goods first. Let's say there is a local nursery and they have some plants, and actually because of the crowdfunding campaign and because of our the outreach that we did for some of the food system stuff, just generating the application around Trafford, we got a local business that said, hey, next time we might donate some plants, so hit us up for that. And so that was kind of a wonderful way to do outreach and to get some of the future supplies that we might need for that program. So always ask first. That's my rule of thumb. All they can say is no. If they say no, that's okay. You're still going to, purchase it if you have to purchase it, but the least, or ask for a discount, maybe they offer a 10% or 20% nonprofit discount. And in those types of cases, those would be special cases where, as the fiscal responsible entity for this part of the project, we could give you, the information to ensure that you could get that nonprofit discount for that particular supplier or vendor. But there's also a tax exempt form. So if you're going to buy stuff, what we've done is we've linked our this request for tax exempt form here. So this isn't the actual form. This is the request for the form, and it's just a Google form that you fill out, and it's going to give us all the information we need to complete what's called a 1220. That's a Pennsylvania tax exempt form. I have to fill it out, sign it, and then I email it back to you. So when you make your purchases for your project, I have all the information I need and I can get that back to you quickly. Okay, and then always problem solve. I think that Rhea did a great job of this when her project was going forward. There were a lot of issues that happened, but on the fly, sometimes you have to think about ways to problem solve and find other ways to get the most out of the resources that you currently have. Like I said, the last call, we try to stretch every single dollar and because those are resources we could use for something else. So go ahead to the next screen, Patrick. All right. The second part of this is other types of resources, which is people. People are wonderful resources because if you have people to donate things or to donate their time, those are things that you don't have to buy. So volunteerism is a great way to harness that people power. So make sure you're signing up volunteers for your project. And actually, we have a volunteer sign up form here. In this way, they can understand what your project is, what your goals are, and the terms of their volunteerism. So you want to be really clear that when they're signing up or to help with a project, that they are signing up as a volunteer. Let them know that right up front, that there will be no compensation for their work. And that you appreciate their work, but we can also document that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But another thing that's great to have is their schedule. When are they available and how many hours? Because you'll see, like when you do your planning worksheet, one of the needs that you have when you do your needs assessment is not only your goods, but also the people power. What kind of volunteers are you going to need to complete that project? If you're implementing a couple gardens like Raya did with food systems, you need to make sure you have the people to do that. And so that can be half of the battle sometimes, just organizing all that. And then how much time can each person contribute? Because if they're saying, yeah, I want to go, I can participate in this project, but oh wait, I don't really have the time to do it, or I only have a couple hours, then maybe they're not right for that project. And maybe they need to think about another project that they want to join on to if they only have a couple hours to offer. So think about that as well. And then establish volunteer training or a meet and greet, which of course now we're doing everything on Zoom. But if you establish these volunteer training ahead of time, just to make sure that everyone knows what they're doing when the day comes, then that's one less thing that you have to worry about. And it also makes it clear to them again the time commitment involved and what kind of skills they would need in order to help out with the project. All right, so we also put on here, sign on to the principles of the initiative. This is actually in our volunteer form. We have the Jimenez principles in our volunteer form because that's part of the organizing that we do to make sure that we're all respecting each other, that we follow those, those really respectful guidelines when we're working together. And then finally, make sure your volunteers understand the kind of time commitment. I know I'm saying that a lot, but it's really important. Okay, so go ahead to the next screen, Patrick. Okay, and then after your project is completed, so you want to request any type of reimbursements for any out-of-pocket expenses to be reimbursed by this Promote PT grant that we have or another grant. If there's an agreed upon amount ahead of time that we've established is for your project, you want to make sure you submit the reimbursement for those things. And so these links are not green. We'll have to change that, Patrick. That's okay. But actually, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and clicking on that reimbursement link, these links are still active. So here's our form right here. So all the information that you'll need to fill that out. And then somebody asked in the beginning, so when you fill this form out, is the response automatic? We went through today and made sure all the responses for these forms are automatic. So you'll get a copy acknowledging that you have submitted the form. I get a copy. And then also for the stuff that deals with money, our bookkeeper gets a copy as well. And then the in-kind contribution form, can you click on that? So this is the online in-kind contribution form. So this is for goods and services. And so let's say there is something that someone wants to donate, like the plants. Let's say someone wants to donate 10 plants. You would want to make sure that you log that, because what will happen is once you fill this form out, it'll send us a notification, and then we actually send out a letter acknowledging their donation. And that's really important because we're a 501c3, every donation can be tax deductible. So we have to send out those acknowledgments to make sure that the person gets the information, so they can use it for their taxes. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, we're going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions, let me know. And then, because when you do your project, sometimes you don't have a computer right in front of you. Most times you don't. We have a printable form as well. Oop. So that's the printable PDF of the in-kind contribution form. All right, and then I don't even think that was 45 minutes. I know I went through everything quickly. Let's take some time to ask questions.
That was a half hour. Even less, because we didn't start it till, so like 20, 25
Yeah.
minutes.
I'm waiting for somebody else.
Well, I think it's very good. Jillian, you're the most organized person I know.
Well, I try really hard at it, Heather.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Now, it's been a while because I've missed a lot of the TICWAC stuff since, I'm going to say, it's going on 2 months. But in the beginning, with the categories of things to do, I was originally signed up with landscaping or land use. There was a there was a subject matter that came up that actually took off on its own, and it didn't become the focus of our group's concern anymore. So at that point, the group sort of diffused, and I roughly kept in touch with it, and the idea somehow resurfaced about what I did a long time ago when I was on council in Monroeville and was working. I was actually sitting on the Monroeville Foundation, but the Monroeville Foundation had a specific thing that they tried to raise money for, which had to do with improving neighborhoods. And so this was the idea that resurfaced because I already did it. And in the 3rd ward here, there was a neighborhood that was off of Logan's Ferry Road, and their entrance sign was falling apart. And I was desperate to find a project, and I was at the right place at the right time, talked to people, and they wanted to do this. And we called, or it somehow got called neighbors to friends, friends to projects. And I basically went to Lowe's, had to try to figure out right away to get a letterhead that said Monroeville Foundation on it. That's how new the Monroeville Foundation was to this idea. Tried to get a 10% discount or so for some of the information, for some of the tools that we needed. And the tools that we needed were all the things that you do to try to re-landscape around the signs that were sort of crumbling. And I had enough volunteers, that was taken care of. I somehow got Lowe's guy to remember me and give me the discount for what was the landscaping tools. And then, as I recall, we just went to the nursery to buy some of the plants that were perennials that would, be able to be planted in this entrance. And it all came together, we had our little angels around us making things happen. And I took pictures. And of course, that if you look on the Monroeville Foundation's website, I don't think they've taken some of that information down as to how successful that project was, to the tune of about $350. All it cost.
That sounds like a huge impact.
Yeah, and it was the only time we used that. Because if you don't keep it alive as a person who's champion to that cause, then it died. And I think it died after I left. I don't think anybody else used this, but I know the Monroeville Foundation has been more successful with they've had a couple of fundraisers like golf tournaments, And I think they have this as a resource. You would therefore think that they would be, there's a form that would fit in nicely, but there's also, they have an application for anybody seeking their assistance in making this Friends to Neighbors Neighborhood Beautiful thing happen. You know, asking for a discount, I now see that perfect forms exist here. And as far as people getting involved taking pictures, I think that's a must. I don't know if there's a problem with, like, I don't want my picture being publicized, and whether or not you'd have to get a permission thing that if you wanted to snap a few pics to make this success. But I see that it fits in to this thing that is landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is to find the neighborhood that's interested, and I wouldn't make it a real nice neighborhood. I'd make it a neighborhood that needs to have a nice facelift.
Mm-hmm.
Does it sound like a project?
I do think it sounds like a project, and actually you brought up a couple things that I wanted to discuss. So one, I think that sounds like a great project, and I think that you did get a lot of impact for the amount of money that you were able to put into it, and that's an even better project. And when you go back to a funder again, let's say somewhere else in Monroeville, which is in the Turtle Creek watershed, you know, you can show that, look, I've had success with this, and this is something that has been successful in the past. They're going to be more likely to fund that project again. Also, you had mentioned taking pictures, and that's something that the food systems group did. They took pictures, and we actually, Mary, I believe today, sent out a press release letting the local press know that we have a fundraiser for this particular project, and sharing about the project. And that's one thing we didn't put on our slides, but that's something that we probably should have thought about as, like, either before, during, or after the project, to try to get press out for your project, because that's going to generate that buzz, and that could generate that income as well. So, you know, local papers are a great place to start. You know, we know, based on our relationship with the Penn Franklin News, which is the Penn Trafford Star, that they are a really small local family paper, that it's just Georgia and her son, essentially, and it was inherited by her father. So it's a really local, you know, family mom and pop paper, and they only do print, but pretty much everyone gets it that's in the area, and it could generate some buzz. And the nice thing about that is she really will take our press release and just basically word for word put it in the paper.
And that's true of a lot of small towns papers that they're happy to have something, and you write it up, they just print it like as if they wrote the story. I mean, they're not pretending or anything, but it's just they're printing what you sent them, which is
right. That's right. And you know what? I think we really kind of either breezed over or kind of skipped past this planning a project slide. I don't even remember seeing it. Now that I'm thinking back on it, maybe we passed it. Patrick, would you mind going back to that
There was
slide?
a project planning template, but I don't think we clicked on the template.
Okay, I think maybe we went over the slide too fast. I want to go back a minute. It's planning a project. Okay, great. So, and this is part of the template. So,
yeah, we didn't see this before.
Yeah, I was when we were doing funding, I was like, wait a minute, we missed a slide. I don't know how that happened.
It's been a long day.
It has. It has. Patrick and I are running on fumes here.
We'll catch up now.
Okay, so and this is all in the template, and the template is right on here if we can click on it. But that's okay. And then also the SMART goals. Yeah, so we've got that. So, and then SMART goals. All right. So if you wouldn't mind just going back really quick to the presentation. Okay, so a project name is really important, and the reason why, it might sound silly, but the reason why it's so important, thank you, sweetie, is because when you want to do something like a press release or raising funds, this is really handy to have on hand, because you already know what you're going to call it. And I think food systems did a great job of this, just reimagining food systems, simple, easy to remember, something that people are really going to like to join in on. And then also who's involved, establishing your goals. So short-term and long-term goals. And I think we could do a hands-on project here where we could do short-term and long-term goals. And are they SMART? So does anybody know what SMART stands for?
Specific, measurable, realistic, time, something with time.
Timely, yep. Do you want to click on that worksheet? All right, so we linked this worksheet for you. And so you've got your initial goal. And this is actually our worksheet that we put together for our team building for climate action, supporting the youth to change the world, which is another program we just started, which is kind of exciting. So specific, what do you want to accomplish? Who needs to be included? When do you want this to, and when do you want to do this, and what is your goal? Measurable, so how are you going to measure your progress? And I think that's something that's really important for any project you do, to measure the project progress. Achievable, is this something that's achievable? Is it something that's going to require motivation? How are you going to accomplish, let's say doing a podcast? What are those resources that you're going to need? Relevant. Why am I setting my goal now? Why is this so important? With the food system, it was really relevant because, we have people that, especially during COVID, we found that there's less access to food, mainly because they're not going to the grocery store as much. And really, if they are going to the grocery store, they could potentially be exposed. And then timely is the last one. And if you'll scroll down, or you can also say time bound.
Yeah.
What is the deadline? And is your deadline realistic? So again, food system had a really specific deadline. We want this fall planting to be done by this by this time. And, that was a goal that they could hold on to. So really just is all about making your goal tangible. And then if you'll click back to the presentation. All right. And then we talked about estimating your needs. We skipped over this, but we talked about it within the presentation. So goods, what are the goods that you need? What are the people that you need? And what's your timeline? And how will you obtain those things? So we talked about fundraising. That's how you obtain some of your needs, but also establishing your volunteer base. And then if we go to the template, Ray, you had asked, I made this really pretty worksheet and it was nice because it had a nice background, but it wasn't editable. This is editable. So this is the first part of planning your project is establishing your goals. So you write in your name and your group members, you put in your short-term and long-term goals. And then on page 2, you look at establishing those needs. So what are the goods you need? What are the people you need and the timeline? And then down at the bottom, how will you obtain those needs? So I think it might be fun if we went through this together for some of the projects. What do you guys think? Do we have any more questions before we do that?
Sounds like a good exercise, though.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that has a question that didn't get a chance to ask it yet? All right, I'm going to take that as a no.
I had one, but you answered it. You're just so thorough.
All right. I try. Doesn't always happen right in the morning.
Mhm.
All right. So I'm trying to pull up. You know what? This might be the best idea. Patrick, would you mind sticking the link to that template in the chat? That's probably the best way for us to get started. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So if you guys can open up your chat and you can open up the link. Now, when doing this, you know, you could do a couple things. You could actually make a copy of this. That way, the next time somebody wants to make it, they have it available for them. So that's the first thing I would do. And actually, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen.
Good.
All right. So here's how you make a copy, just for those that need the assistance. File, make a copy, and then it's going to go copy. Boom. That's it. Pretty easy. And then you can start working in the document. Now, we also made this as a template, so if someone forgets that step, it's okay. We actually, or if you're in our G Suite, we go to new document from a template. I don't think we can make this public. I don't know how to do that. We have a template right here that you can click on. So we've made this internally. So if anybody, you know, forgets to do that first step, it's no big deal. We have the template ready to go. All right. So does anybody want to use their project as a guinea pig to start working through this?
You're on mute, Lois.
Geez, I was navigating. Okay.
Mm.
I mean, I can wing it. You know, I guess everybody's bobbing, yeah. Okay, let's wing it with beautification. I have to name this now, don't I? Let's see. Now, am I going to talk and other people are going to type in, or how's that going to happen?
Julian, you're on mute. You're on mute.
So, I mean, I can type in, you know, I think.
When I linked and I actually went away from this page to the actual document, and I could see that Patrick's cursor was there, I thought I could navigate around too and type into that thing, but I had no idea. It doesn't matter to me. It probably would be better for you to do it.
Yeah, no problem. And actually, I think because I made a copy of it, that's why I can type into it and no one else is going to see it. But you know what I'll do, because maybe someone else wants to help type. There's the link to the new document in the chat.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Help type it.
type as we talk.
All right. So who's in your beautification group?
Well, let's see. I had.
May I interrupt, Lois? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We need access, Jillian.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Lois, to interrupt
No,
you.
I saw that too, Patrick.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Lois.
Most of the people that were sitting at the table with Dave Mintz and myself are involved with the Churchill Country Club stuff that they're doing with a land trust in order for the Chalfant for that project. And so, you know, that was Renee Dolney and Maria.
Maria, yeah.
Yeah, Maria Swartz was in that, and one of them was a reverend. Well, anyway, they've never joined the TICWAC group, which, you know, I complained about it. Why don't you join? Well, they had already gotten things out of the way. So that left Dave Mintz and myself. I gave Dave last second email telling him I was joining here tonight. He may be doing something else. But those are the only two people that I would say would be in the group so far, is Dave and myself.
Okay.
And whatever people we could approach for their neighborhood.
Yeah. Here's a tip. We use this tactic all the time at Protect BT. And this is especially important when there's like a new site, a new well site or something. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. If you get one person in a community that can go around and put a flyer on their in the door of their neighbor, you might then get 5 people, 10 people that want to help you.
Yeah, and that's kind of how that worked out for the Leaside Drive off of Logan's Ferry Road. I mean, there were already 4 people there. I mean, it was their neighborhood. They already bought in.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to put to be determined, and we're going to hope, and that gives us an action plan.
Would it be helpful to put like as tentative possible prospective neighborhoods for this project?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody has a plan that, is off of a main road or this or that. And sometimes it's hard to determine which areas. I mean, I'm only speaking for Monroeville. Turtle Creek goes beyond Monroeville, but as far as like, if I was to get money from the Monroeville Foundation, I'm pretty sure the project would have to be in Monroeville. So therefore, we have 7 wards in Monroeville. Some are older than the others. The first and the second ward aren't necessarily older. Alyssa lives in the second ward, and they're pretty upscale neighborhoods. The biggest family populated ward is the one I'm in, 3rd ward. And so, I don't know how you want to identify it by, it could be 3rd ward, Monroeville. It could be nearby places in Penn Hills. I don't know. I don't have contacts there. I only have Monroeville.
And that's okay. This is just an initial brainstorming document. So, you might talk to somebody tomorrow and they're like, oh, I know 2 communities and I know someone that lives there.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm even thinking, that Alpine Village community where one of the food systems flower beds went in, perhaps, somewhere in that community, they might want something like this. And that's in Monroeville.
That was in Alpine Village.
Yeah.
It's the 4th ward. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put this in here, and then, like I said, this is a living document, and people can contribute, and we can, keep brainstorming. So then every time you'd have, set up a planning meeting or something like that, with the larger group, or once you get new volunteers, you can then say, so-and-so knows somebody who lives over here. And, I always look in the beginning of their plan and it looks kind of run down. I wish it looked better. I feel very lucky that some of the ladies in my community have done that at the beginning of our plan. Even though we don't have one of those like big stones that says Bella Woods, because this is an older community, but they still do a really beautiful job of beautification. All right, and then what are the long-term goals for this project? Could this be something that, you do a couple in Monroeville and then we do it in other communities, maybe we do some in Braddock, if that's something that people in Braddock want to see. Maybe we go to Penn Hills, if that's something that Penn Hills wants to see. And this is something that long-term could be really wonderful, to not only beautify, but this is something that's going to give people, a sense of pride in their community and just really uplift people.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with that one example I was telling you about. The people who lived in the neighborhood and watched what we did over the course of that one day, felt a little on the guilty side, and they said, hey, you know what? We're going to take up some money to make the sign, get new letters for the sign behind it. And that's, you know, I want to say a lot of it was guilt, like, well, I didn't go down there and help you all, but hey, maybe I can get some money and we can add something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, it becomes theirs.
Well, I'm going to put in the T for our SMART goals because I think that is time bound.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the definition of time bound, but you know, why is this important now? Because, you know, COVID, people need uplifting these days. You know,
And people are at home more and out less, so they pay attention to their house. There's all kinds of people are planting gardens everywhere. I see it as I walk around my own neighborhood. On one street, like, so I guess, I don't know if it's permaculture or what, people were getting rid of their lawns. One or two people did it. Now, like, everyone in a row is kind of putting in these gardens that are all, like, there's no lawn. There's all, like, plants and other stuff, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the aging populations don't necessarily want to do a whole lot of upkeep. So they want perennials that come back each year, and they want ground cover so they don't have to keep, you know, weeding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, I know I do.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, my dog loves the little flowers at the end of the Bella Woods. He always smells them.
Just smells them, huh?
He always just stops and smells the flowers.
Aw.
Every time I take him for a walk.
You're putting part of your acronym of SMART into these boxes. Like, you already put time.
Timely. Mm-hmm.
Because your short-term goals are part of, I see.
Yeah, I just started doing this, you know, just kind of brainstorming. Okay, what's our S in SMART again?
Specific.
Specific. Oh, so we do have something really specific. We can narrow this down a little bit more.
You know,
And M is measurable, so
oh,
that kind of goes together with specific a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
well, see, I would have been ready to say measurable. Okay, are we at a cost limit? Do we have to? But maybe that's not part of measurable.
It's more like, what kind of impact is it having in a measurable way?
Okay.
Not necessarily what it costs. I mean, that's important too, but it's what the impact is.
Okay.
I think the impact kind of goes back down to the timeliness of why this is so important right now. All right. And what's A? Actionable?
Was it achievable?
That was achievable, yes.
Achievable. Okay. So how can this become achievable? Well,
By not setting the goals too big.
By not setting the goals too big. That's good.
Well, by having the people whose neighborhood that takes interest tell us what their goals would be. I mean, you know, it's got to be a shared goal.
Right. Good.
I like it.
Get buy-in, yeah.
And Lois has already proven that it's achievable because she was able to do it with very little funds. So she's proven, there's proven outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. And then R, what's R stand for?
That was the, realistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought realistic, but it's something else here.
It's relevant here.
Relevant, yeah.
I think some of these can be interchangeable.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an acronym. It's just to help guide through the process.
Oh, there's precedent. That was the word I was thinking of. That there's precedent for it by Lois herself.
Oh, okay. You said a precedent for it, right?
Already done.
Mm-hmm.
You've done it.
Right.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our goals are SMART.
Yeah. Okay. So
Awesome.
that validates as to whether or not it's it fits the.
Yeah, these are all good things too. When you're talking about writing a grant, like you were talking about the Monroeville Foundation, I'm betting they have a grant process. You can take.
The time I left them, they were looking for.
You can take this framework right here and expand upon it a little bit, and boom, there's your grant application right there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Great. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Anonymous Coyote, for typing away. All right. So our long-term goals, it sounds like long-term, there'd be other potential sites, and we would just be increasing the impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to add to long-term?
I mean, unless somebody likes the model of when they want to adopt it at a different level. I mean, but you're trying to do that here.
Great. Modeling concept. Awesome. Okay. All right. What are we going to need to do our project?
Well, you need, if it happens to be beautification of an entrance, something that's it would be landscaping supplies. Many people have those supplies on their own selves, because if they're going to be involved with the project at all, they've got a trowel, they've got a rake, and that's exactly what we did. We brought our own stuff. The other stuff was, do you have access to water, or a way to bring water in? Do you have
Their own tools?
The tools for landscaping, and I guess everybody knows what they are then. Let's see.
Aren't there like systems that you can put into, like, you put it around the plants and it helps them so they don't need as much water, or like it collects it or something? Like people put them around young trees. And
the way that you trench around young trees is you kind of build a moat after you build up on the root of the plant. You build this moat around it, and what you're basically doing is helping nature retain. It's a retention pond of water. But I mean, every landscaping has to have a well-watered, somebody, again, it's people. It's people going down there and making sure it gets off. It takes hold.
Mm-hmm.
It's watered enough. Rain barrel, sure. Hey, we were trying to even think of that too.
Great. So I if I live next door to that, I'd be like, heck yeah, you can use my water.
Yeah. See, me too. And the houses are far enough away that they'd have to have a mighty long hose to do that. So, geez, I don't even remember. Maybe that's what we did. Should remember that. So the what do you call soil amendments, things that you add in order to make what would normally be not a great growing space, maybe a better one.
yeah, no mushroom.
No, but
Right, Rhea?
there are people who are there's a guy that does Steel City soils. Well, Alyssa knows him.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope he's still thriving, because he had a great business, and he basically did a tea using all kinds of stuff, funguses, etc. And then, when we did the garden behind the Monroeville Library, he delivered a lot of that stuff. Anyway, that's part of the goods. Soil amendments. Plants and ground covers, they all fall underneath plants, right?
And like, what land is this going to be on? Is it private property? Is it public property?
That was the other thing too. Into the plan off of Logan's Ferry Road begins this little sub plan with a different name that was on the sign. And whoever had decided, there was no homeowner association, these are all single family homes. That was just a common area. The municipality was aware of what we were doing there. In fact, on the opposite side where there were two signs coming into the plan, there was a guide rail missing, and it went down into a body of water. And the municipality was really helpful. Public Works put in a new guide rail there so that they improved it. So that's all. That's municipal property, or it is. I can't think of the term. It basically is
Easement. Is that what you're? Easement. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Okay, I think we're making great progress here. And so what's our timeline going to be for this project? Is this something that's going to happen in the spring?
Would have to be when things thaw and people are ready to dig ground in the spring. So yes, it would be from and to, essentially from the month of May to the month of midsummer, you start things like that as well. So you could be starting all these things, working your way to get them set hold throughout the summer from the month of May, we'll say.
Excellent. Great. Okay, I think this is wonderful. And then how are you going to obtain your needs? I already started writing some stuff. You're going to gather your volunteers, neighbors. You can look at the, I don't know if Allegheny County has the records that you can, excuse me, that you can pull.
Yeah.
County records.
On behalf of looking at the neighborhood, you mean, or what?
To see if to find those easements or find those parcels.
Yeah.
Those public parcels.
Yeah, and you could just basically talk to your building and engineering department within whatever township municipality you're in. Because that's generally where the code enforcement is, and they have all the maps, or they should. So you could do it locally.
Mm-hmm. Great.
You should be able to do it locally.
You can look for grants.
Yeah.
You can raise funds and ask for donations of goods. Let's say there's a Lowe's or someone else that wants to donate.
I don't know how narrow their margins are now during COVID. I mean, I would think that places like Home Depot and Lowe's are quite solvent during these times, unlike maybe other places like restaurants they're under. But then grocery stores, Giant Eagle's got to be getting volume, and they do things too. The only problem with that is you have to go well in advance and ask them.
Well, we have till spring.
Yeah, this is
Well,
true.
sometimes in spring, like, Home Depot and those places, they reach a point where there's a bunch of stuff they have to get rid of quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. Well, I think this is a great start to our project.
Yeah, man. By volunteering, you helped.
So let's go back to the name real quick. I just put in Tickwack Beautification Project. Do we want to call it something else, or are we good with that name, or does anybody else have any ideas that they'd like to insert?
I think using the name neighborhood should be in there. Your neighborhood, or a better neighborhood, or something neighborhood. I don't know what y'all think.
I think maybe something edible would be good to be in there, either if it's food for nature or food for people. Because beautification to me implies planting flowers, and that's nice, but I think that there's some more, I think that flowers can be interspersed within foods for either bees or birds or people. So I feel like there needs to be a word that would reveal that in the title.
Mm.
Maybe there could be a choice, Alyssa, because maybe some people want edible flowers. Is your edible flower garden? Is your edible flower entrance in your neighborhood? Again, it's got to come down to you got to get a hook, and you got to get people to participate by what they want, and what they may want may be just frills and maybe not edible, but hey, that may not be the long-term thing. That may be just to get their interest.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they want frills or if they want edible, either way, the bees will be happy.
It's true. And so, again, I'm bad on coming up with, you would never want me to brand anything. I can't think of things like that.
Do you want to have the reimagine in the name?
Reimagine your neighborhood? I don't know. What do you think?
Or just, reimagine Tickwack Neighborhood Beautification Project. Yeah.
You can even take off project.
Mm-hmm.
Just beautification.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I mean, I get you, Alyssa. I know where you're going here, and I know everybody should be there. I just gotta get people's interest. I was talking, my sister and I.
Well, actually, let me just speak to that for a second. And so, I actually have been taking a course over the past 6 or 7 weeks on starting an online business, and they tell us the same thing that you're saying, Lois, which is, to quote unquote hook a person. And so, if what you're talking about here in this process, you really want to be specific, we're going to do it, in my understanding, a whole bunch of these papers. In other words, this is just one. So what you're saying is this is going to hook the mainstream, the mainstream, most of the people. But then there's some other people that you also want to hook. And there's a few of us around. And so that would, I think from my understanding is that would be like a different project, because I was just typing away. I was the one typing away on the long-term goals. And to me, it's all the same. But the bottom line is there is a difference between annuals. Those are plants that you put in that are just going to last for the warm season. They're not going to be the same kind of pollinator plants as natives to southwestern Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but there's a difference between propagating what needs to be propagated in terms of food for the wildlife and food for the people, and ornamentals. That's the word I was looking for. Beautification to me implies ornamentals. And ornamentals that are meant for Florida but stay here during our season are not going to be helping the bees to the degree that we need to help the bees. And we're reimagining here. And although some of what I say might be perceived as intensity, it's the new reality in my view. And so I don't know what the word is other than beautification, or how to enhance this project name, but maybe reimagine is enough for this particular sheet. But I just wanted to plant some of those other ideas in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think these ideas might develop as a result of just brainstorming here.
Well, we could have things like focus on perennials and native species.
Well, the hook is, hey, am I going to have to keep at this, or is this something that can last for a while? I like my, and that's, and it's like, hey, did you know you could do two things at once? And that's sort of the interest, or what I call the hook. And that is that, yeah, sure, you can do this stuff. You don't have to make it look like the intersection, you know, the intersection that's up there, 4822, and they keep replanting those annuals there. I mean, it's great. It looks nice. They get maybe the Boy Scouts to do it, but I mean, it constantly has to be replenished. And in fact, that area in Monroeville, which is the busiest intersection, and it's got this one little area by the on-ramps to 376. They've been talking about that area looking different for forever, you know, and that could end up being what happens.
Yeah.
Imagine at that corner of 28 and 42, the second busiest intersection in the state, if pawpaw trees were planted there, and no person may want to eat them because there's so much pollution heading by there, but it would be a great conversation piece. And I'll bet in the middle of the night, some animals, when they were ripe for just the 2 weeks of that native tree ripening, some deer or other critters would sneak in there and eat those pawpaws. And that could be the entranceway, the gateway to the eastern suburbs instead of the fracking trucks. And so kind of putting something in that is really reimagination is in my view, really important at this point. Not a typical thing anymore from us. It's okay that some of it is that, but what else is there? Do we offer a pawpaw tree, a seedling, to these two people who have agreed so graciously to accept our gift of a raised bed garden with vegetables that they know? Do they move a little bit further out of their comfort zone and also accept a pawpaw tree, for example? I'm just looking for a little bit of something other than what has already been done by other organizations, at least as a beginning, as an introduction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I'm a part of this group on Facebook. There's probably 100 of them, but there's, pollinator gardens. And it's all about the different pollinators we find. And I think because Promote PT has that sustainability component, Facebook's trying to tell me like, you should belong to this group. And then I will go on and look at the posts, and the things that they post are really beautiful. But we can get ideas, this is the initial brainstorming. We can get ideas to find, what we can come up with along the way. Because it would be great if we could have something that was perennial, something that could be, low maintenance. I think that there's probably maybe a checklist that we're, kind of like an ideal list that we could look at, and then we can find out what plants fit those needs, and see what we can find.
And sometimes we might want meadows.
Yeah, that's a good point, Heather.
Yeah, so the idea of planting the seeds of permaculture where the landscape is for the animals and for the people and not the monoculture green grass lawn is definitely an important transformation culturally that we could be modeling. So yeah, the meadow is definitely one of those things, like the Boyce Park Meadow over in Plum, which is 4 acres, I believe, but you could do that in your side yard, your front yard. We might, I would be happy to supply a copy of the 2 letters that I've had to write to the municipality of Monroeville over the past decade, because they've cited our yard because we have things growing that are taller than 8 inches. So at some point there's going to be a shift in the ordinances, but that hasn't happened yet. But so through this, we can then educate the communities to shift the ordinances, because right now in Monroeville, you're not technically allowed to grow your grass above 8 inches. So biodiversity is not promoted. Meadows are not promoted in yards. Yeah.
Unless you're talking about an embankment that adjoins some, like they have huge swales between some neighborhoods, and nobody likes looking at them. So That's an area though that it's kind of hard if you're going into a body of water. You've got all kinds of obstacles there, and let's face it. By the end of 2021, when they're doing the 2022 budget here in Monroeville, they're going to see that they are going to need everybody's help in terms of making things look better and maybe making them look more natural. Because when it comes to bottom lines, you don't necessarily have the budget to work with, and people got to roll their sleeves up and do something as an alternative. And that might be the timing you need to do stuff like that. I'm saying that as time goes on, there may be less resistance to that. And I know you've had problems with your own yard, Alyssa. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I don't have problems. I think it's the municipality that's having
That's what I'm
problems.
saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So maybe that's a good long-term goal to get some of the municipalities to change their ordinances, to allow for these gardens.
That's
Also,
that's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's
years
good
ago,
for
we were going to try to put an ordinance forward in Monroeville to ban pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides that are carcinogens. So that would be another piece of that. Maybe that's a partnership with, Food and Water Watch and Protect PT rather than this group, but that's another part of the picture.
Well, great.
Those of us that have organic gardens can't have organic gardens if we're downstream and downslope like I am from my next door neighbor who sprays their lawn to look like a golf course. So that's really important.
So is there anyone that didn't have a chance to speak yet that might want to speak or contribute anything to our project planning or just a comment about or a question even about the process or about some of the resources that we presented earlier?
I just wanted to say, I'm hearing all these resources with the most recent issue that we were discussing, actually all of them with natives and changing local laws and such. And a lot of those resources I would also find helpful. I wonder if it would generally be helpful for others as well if we could help consolidate some of those resources, like share with everyone, like have them in a localized place and share them with people.
Are you talking about the resources that we talked about on the presentation, or?
Talking about the ones that we just, like Alyssa said about a letter that she had written to her municipality. Alyssa said another thing, about the ordinance that's being made in Monroeville. Like a lot of those things, because those are things that we're trying to achieve here in Verona. But it would be wonderful if we had something to start off of, And if I find that helpful for Verona, I think that you're going somewhere. Do you have a lot of these things already?
Well, I don't have a lot of these things already, although I can kind of tell you where to find those things, because an ordinance is an ordinance is an ordinance. And so knowing a lot about ordinances fighting oil and gas, I've been familiarized with the whole process. So we could actually, if you wanted to, we could do, a little workshop on ordinances and how to change them once we've identified some that we want to change. And I see Lois clapping. She was actually involved in the one ordinance meeting that I had a couple years ago. And so, what we've done here, and it's not ready yet, but you guys could start logging in if you wanted to. This is what our and let me go back. So on our webpage, we're beginning to start our member portal. And we did this for Protect PT, and so what happens is when people post blogs and things like that, you can subscribe and automatically get those things. But we thought, where could we put all these resources? Where could we put the PDF? Where could we put things like you're talking about, Rhea? And so within this function of our website, we're able to have those discussion boards, and people could post oh, here's a letter I wrote. And then someone else could be like, oh my gosh, I can use that letter. And so what you do is you go onto your Reimagine TikWalk member login. My dog's having a cow. And you sign up. And I've actually already signed up. I'm already a member. We were testing this morning. And I can log in if I can get to it. It should already have my stuff. Okay. So then here's your little picture that shows up. And you can go to your account. And within your account, you can edit your profile. You can make your profile private if you wanted to, or just have it public. We're working on, and this will be so wonderful when we have the community organizer on board, because then any events that are coming up, so this will be events like upcoming meetings for different groups. So let's say I am part of the TikWalk initiative, but I really like my group, but I have time to devote to 2 groups, and I want to see when the other meetings are for the other groups. So this is where each we post the different meetings for the different groups. And then this notifications is where we'd have what you're talking about, Rhea, where you could post and comment and post those resources, and everyone could interact together. There's also a resources tab. And again, this is not planned out. This is not fully made yet, but we already started working on it. So.
Great.
That's great. Thank you. That's amazing. You're one step ahead always, huh?
I try to be. Does anybody else that maybe hasn't had a chance to speak have something to say yet?
Emily? We haven't heard from Emily for a while.
Yeah, I'm just kind of taking it all in. I haven't been able to come to any meetings lately because of school, so it's nice to be back.
We're glad to have you back.
We are. And I think Meredith's joined us. Meredith, do you have any questions on anything that we talked about?
No, I'm actually brand new. I saw this on Facebook and thought it sounded interesting, but I'm not in the loop at all about what's going on. But it's been interesting, and it sounds like you guys are doing some cool stuff. So I'd definitely like to learn more and how I can help.
Great. Well, we're glad you joined us. And I know, Sean, I can show you a little rundown, Meredith, in a minute. But Sean, do you have any questions before we move forward?
No, I don't think I have any questions right now. I'm sorry that I can't show my face to everybody. I'm having a little bit of internet troubles here, but I really appreciate the opportunity to, see how things work, kind of on the inside. I just had a job interview today, so it's nice to be able to see Promote PT in action, in this meeting, and it seems like you guys are working on some really interesting projects. So, thank you for having me here as a guest. Okay.
Well, thanks for being here.
Hi, Jillian. I'm just wondering if we could just do a quick go around of introductions so we would know, we all kind of, I guess some of us already know each other, but if we could just go around and talk a little bit about, what we're doing here, maybe that would be good.
Yeah, maybe the people who are involved in different projects could just say what project they're working on, and that way the new people will get an idea of what the projects are.
Well, I've already talked about the stuff that's in the past, but I'm Lois Drumheller.
And what watershed do you live in, Lois?
The Turtle Creek. And since 1998, I've been in Monroeville, so that's mostly Monroeville.
How about you, Heather? What watershed do you live in?
Not sure, but I am along, but the Celine Street was a path from one part of the Monongahela to the other in the Revolutionary War.
Whoa.
Wow.
So anyway, so I'm Heather Haar. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, and I'm a co-founder of the Reimagine Turtle Creek Watershed and Airshed communities, and also am working in the or volunteering here or whatever, working in the project area of the sustainable buildings on the Eco Mall project, and maybe Emily can talk, is in that group too, so maybe she can talk a little about it.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I'm Emily Ritchie. I interned with the group over the summer. I'm a student at Chatham, but I was working with in Heather's group with the green infrastructure and the Eco Mall project, and also in the health and wellness group with their podcast with Alyssa. Yeah, I guess that's it.
And just for the knowledge of the new people there, so what we're doing is we're having our one of our projects, the Eco Mall project, analyzed by a consulting firm called Downstream Strategies of West Virginia, and they're going to analyze the economic impact of the proposed project, and those kind of figures can be used in presenting the project to potential funders and community leaders and so on. And that report will be coming out in October.
That's great. Were they involved in one of the presentations we had in person? Did they do it?
No, that was Brandon Dennison.
Okay.
Maybe you're thinking of?
I don't know, for some reason.
No, yeah. They presented in Indiana County, but like a year ago for a conference there. But Brandon Dennison was the one who talked about his project, the social enterprises,
Right.
and workforce development, that. So maybe Josh has some things to say about the Eco Mall. Is Josh coming? Yeah, he's coming. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
So just your thoughts on the Eco Mall, or a little bit about what you'd like, what we'd like to see happen to the Monroeville Mall?
Yeah, I grew up in Monroeville, and I'm excited. Oh, 1 second. Sorry about that. No, I grew up in Monroeville, and it's I'm excited to. Oh my gosh, we talked about so many things with the Monroeville Mall project, and I would really like to see something green happen there, like the green wall or something that people can learn more about, that sort of thing. Something interactive, something that you could see, something that you could even touch. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Good, yeah. So the idea is to, step by step, turn the Monroeville Mall into an eco mall, an environmentally ecological mall with solar power and charging, EV charging, in the parking lot, and more focus on, be a place where the kinds of things like businesses that have to do with sustainable food or crafts that would go in place of some of the retail that's there now. And since malls are having a hard time surviving, the idea of reimagining the mall and the mall concept is timely. So that's going to be what is analyzed by downstream strategies. But there are other projects going on. There are like 5 or 6 other projects that are going on that others are doing. So.
Yeah, and Josh, I just want to add, as somebody who's lived in Monroeville, that it's pretty clear that CBL, who currently manages the mall, there are certain parts of that mall that are not, they don't act as renters, and they actually have their own agreements. The general consensus, at least here, is that they don't want to see it go away. There's so much invested in stormwater management that surrounded that mall as time went on, that they want it to be something. And they want to, they being any of the people that are currently involved in their decision making, and it's probably just the people who manage it now, do not want that site to not function as a mall. They want it to be something. I don't think they have the ideas, either that or they're not sharing what the ideas are, or that they're at such a high level, but we're the best to bring those ideas forward because we live there.
And who did you say it was? CB?
C as in the third letter of the alphabet, B as in the second letter, L as in Lois. CBL.
Oh, okay. CBL, that's the management firm?
Yeah, and if you do a search on the internet, you will see that when you take a look at the various malls around the United States that they manage, they pretty much all are cookie cutter the same way. Monroeville Mall used to be something entirely different when it opened up in the 70s. People better than me will tell you this because they actually lived here. Simon, after the initial group that owned it, it was fantastic. Simon, who also runs Ross Park Mall, continued on, and the stores were pretty much, they mimicked what they have at Ross Park Mall. And CBL came in sometime in the early 2000s, I think. And, a lot of things start changing around the first 5 years, in this millennium. But anyway, that they don't want it to go away, and they know it needs to be something else. And I find that very interesting. And I wish I could give you the reference of where I heard that. It may have just been a local report, but I would keep track of that news. And I want to tell Josh this because that's something, that was a group you were involved with. And it's a big piece of something to chew on, but it is real. It needs to survive.
Good.
Well, I think we had Emily and I think it was Meredith that hopped off. So that's sad. So do we want to go around and introduce the rest of us, or do we want to talk about the groups on the page? What do you guys want to do?
I think we kind of all know each other.
Okay.
Yeah, her name is Meredith Jukniewicz.
Okay. So on the Reimagine page, we've got, and I'm not sure if Sally did anything else, if she did anything on this. It looks like there is some stuff done on it, which is great. I'm not sure if that was Sally or if that was Amanda that worked on that. But just talking about the podcast that's going on. So that's improvement. That's great. And then,
I'm sorry, Julie, what do you mean the Reimagine page? Oh, Are you talking about the website?
Yes.
Okay.
And we still don't have a lot for landscaping and land management.
If you don't mind taking off your screen, like we can't chat right now.
I don't have the chat open.
Yeah,
You
you can do the chat from the bottom. That's been open the whole time. You just have to pull down the bar to the bottom of the screen so it pulls it up.
Well, I stopped sharing, so if anybody wants to.
Yeah, now you can do it too. Yeah.
Why?
So
I'm seeing. For the past 20 minutes or so, I still have the community project. Oh, I see. I'm not on the. I realize I don't know how to get back to that screen.
Okay. Are you talking about the Zoom screen?
Yeah, I realized that maybe I didn't realize that everybody else was on a different screen than me.
You might have it in miniature at the bottom if you click on your computer.
I don't know
You see a little camera at the bottom of your
okay, sorry. I've been staring at that document the whole time, wondering why it was there. It's because I had pulled it up there. Okay.
All right. Well, I know that it's been a long day for me. I would be happy to end the session early. I know.
I would too. No, because we didn't get to meet in groups tonight, but we didn't really have most of the groups here. And it was a nice small group, so we could kind of all do it together and going through the exercises and everything. And it's real. It's not just an exercise.
That's right.
Lois is going to go out and do something. So it felt very productive. And it was like not too much stuff to digest. And we were working with it actively, so that was very good to not just read it or hear it, but do it, know. So, so it was. I enjoyed the session tonight.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, I like to do hands-on stuff. That's how I work. That's how I learn the best is hands-on.
Yeah.
And
that's vocational ed,
What?
That's vocational education.
Yeah. That's me. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you got a lot out of what we presented, and we'll be sure to fix the links just to make sure they're green and get that out to you. And we'll just get it out to everyone that registered for tonight's event. And we'll keep working on the resource page, Rhea, and hopefully people can post stuff like the example ordinances. I think that's a great idea because that's all something that we could all use. And if we want to have an ordinance meeting, we can do that. I do have some materials from a previous meeting that I could recycle, and we could put that together. It might take me a little bit though, because we got a lot going on, but it's definitely a great idea for the future.
And even, in terms of COVID, they might be moved to do something if it's phrased in the point of, people need to be able to grow more than 8 inches. So, in this time, because everybody wants to do this stuff,
That's right.
So.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. It was a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Patrick. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for all the notes and everything.
Oh, sure.